Well, it's a feel-good Friday, folks. Hope you're doing well. It is the end of the first week of Parliament, and man, did that one feel long. Now, we had the opening day Monday, then Tuesday, the king was here to read the throne speech, and that was, well, it was what it was. And then we moved on to later in the week, the drama really kicked up, because what the conversation was, what the plight of the conservative side of the aisle, the plight of working class Canadians was, Carney, you said you were going to do some stuff. You said you're going to move quickly. You're going to catalyze our economy. You're going to catalyze. We're going to catalyze. You know, that whole word catalyze, that kept coming up, right? Waiting for that to happen. And no bills are coming. No bills are coming. They had made some promises. Hey, we're going to bring down taxes for the middle class. We're going to help do. We're going to do that. We're going to boom. But really, we're still waiting on some bills to surface. Some did, some didn't. And just overall, for an opening week with a lot of promises during the campaign, it was kind of flat. It was kind of meh. Not really interesting. Until Mark Carney decided to drop a $486 billion spending plan with zero budget. And that is what we're going to be talking about today, because that exploded from yesterday into today's question period. People are not happy. Poilievre comes out and says some stuff about it, and we're going to be touching on all of it today. Welcome to the Elliott Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. I'm grateful to have you back on. If you get any value of the show, you enjoy this, and you have some good times, make sure you hit the like button on the way in, subscribe if you haven't already, and just enjoy your time of this pure, beautiful 20 minutes of edutainment. We're going to take you to church, baby. It's Friday. It's a feel-good Friday, so let's do that. Let's start feeling good. Let's get on into it, shall we? This news dropped yesterday. Just a reminder, let's kind of get you up to speed, shall we? Carney government tables $486 billion spending plan with very few details. Oh, people are not happy about this. The Carney government presented Parliament Tuesday with a plan to spend about the same amount of money in the fiscal year ahead as the Trudeau government did in its final year, about $486 billion, a plan that left the Conservatives, well, unimpressed. Just like Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney's spending is absolutely out of control. In fact, it's worse, Conservative leader Poilievre told reporters outside the House of Commons. And indeed, the spending plan tabled Tuesday is almost certain to change when it is updated in the fall, when it will likely include nearly 24. Did you hear that? 2-4 weekend, 2-4 beer, $24 billion in spending commitments for this year that the Liberals promised during the election campaign. There is no evidence that the spending plan tabled Tuesday contained, for example, $3.5 billion that campaigning Liberals said they would spend this year on Trade Diversification Corridors Fund. During the campaign, the Liberals promised to boost CBC's funding by $150 million a year, but in the spending plan tabled Tuesday, the CBC's budget is up by just $42 million to $1.43 billion. The minister responsible for the CBC, Stephen Guilbeault, declined to answer questions Wednesday about this department's spending plan. Friday, again, this stuff happened Tuesday, Wednesday, talked a little about yesterday, but man, it's blown up today. And that is really what the obfuscation of it all, and the really frustrating part of all of this, as I'm sure you're feeling right now, is even the things we didn't like that they were spending money on, they are not even following through on those promises. So where is this money going? Well, we just learned that, well, they promised $150 million to CBC, and they're only saying that we're only seeing $42 million from what we can see and what you're going to show us. And then, but we just see that at least, you know, the good guys, right? The McKinseys of the world, you know, the Grant Thorntons of the world, you know, those guys are going to get their spending increased up to $24 billion. I think it was up from $16 billion, increased by $8 billion of spending on outside sources called consultants. That's what you're getting a lot more of. More money that's going to be leaving the federal government to these private corporations that are likely close and cozying up to Mark Carney and the Liberal Party and have for so long now. The different Liberal government, they said, well, not so different, is it? But the reason why I wanted to kind of share this, to kind of kick us off from what we are going to be expecting later today. What happened today? Well, question period kicked off, and yesterday was talked about yesterday, but then it really kind of hit ahead today when Melissa Lantsman and the finance minister, Mr. Champagne, went head-to-head in the House of Commons over this issue, and well, it went exactly how you would think it would have went, but I really want to break down the interaction and show you what I'm talking about.
Prime Minister spent weeks parading parading around the country and promising Canadians he'd, quote, spend less. But the guy who was supposed to give us fiscal restraint dropped an 8% spending hike, after promising he'd cap government spending at 2%. A big broken promise and a $500 billion spending bill without an actual budget. He called himself an Ottawa outsider, but he's picking up pretty quick on the ways of old Liberal Ottawa. Businesses and households across the country spend their money and live within their means. Why can't the Prime Minister do the same?
Minister of Finance.
So here we go. So you gotcha. It's pretty simple, right? Promise 2% increased spending or capping at 2%. Well, it's up to 8%. It's not really looking good. Why aren't you working within a budget? We want to see a budget. What's going on? Why are you spending this money? See, that's the question. Pretty straight and simple. Well, here's how politics works, especially in the House of Commons. Obviously, Francois Champagne is not going to answer the question, but what he directs the attention to, well, should frustrate you beyond belief.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. In fact, we have more good news, Mr. Speaker, for Canadians. In fact, Statistics Canada just announced this morning that the Canadian economy grew by 2.2% in the first quarter, Mr. Speaker. This is a plan that is working. This is a plan about building the strongest economy in the G7. This is about transforming our economy, Mr. Speaker. This is about an ambitious, a confident, and a prosperous Canada, Mr. Speaker. We will deliver for Canadians.
The amendment for
So that was the answer. You caught that well. I appreciate the question from across the aisle. However, guess what? We're dropping the middle class tax cut. What's coming? We are making life more affordable. Look what we're giving. We're going to give you $30 back. Thank us later, Canada. We are awesome. Why am I so great? Minister of Finance right here. Woo. I'm awesome. Feel myself a little bit. But here we go. Melissa Lantsman, obviously, is going to retort back. And it keeps getting worse.
Leave it to the Liberals to tell Canadians that $500 billion blank check and an 8% spending hike after promising to cap it at 2% means good news for Canadians. A request for a $500 billion blank check isn't a plan. It's the exact opposite. And so far, the plan is the government wants to send $1,400 per Canadian family for consultants, for government consultants. He said they cut it by $7 billion. Instead, they increased it by $6 billion. If the Prime Minister is the man with a plan who you want to hire in a crisis, then why does he need to hire so many families?
Minister of Finance.
Again, great question to ask. Again, I mistaken my numbers earlier. It was 18 billion up to 24 billion. So increased by 6 billion. And that was a legitimate question. So who are you hiring? Why is this money going out? You said you have a plan. Where's the plan? Give us a budget. Where's this money going? Fairly simple, just in different words. And here goes another hilarious and frustrating answer.
Mr. Speaker, this is an interesting question, but the real question this morning is how much the Canadian economy has grown over the last quarter. And the answer, 2.2%. Much higher than economists' predictions. So when you have a plan to grow the Canadian economy, to make it the strongest in the G7, to transform our economy, to have an ambitious and prosperous country, Mr. Speaker, well, that's what Canadians have asked for, and that's what we're delivering.
Hilarious. Hilarious. All right, where's the money going? Guess what? Great question. But the real question, he says, is look how much our economy is growing. People are starving in the streets, but look how our economy is growing artificially, of course. But it's growing. We love looking at numbers that have no context to them. Well, Melissa then retorts back yet again, wanting an answer to her question.
Mr. Speaker, if the government had a plan, they'd table a budget yesterday and tell Canadians exactly how their money is being spent. And of course, nothing says affordability like hiring the architect of the housing crisis to fix the problem here. The new housing minister let Vancouver home prices rise by 179% when he was in office. So I have a very simple question. Can he tell us how much of this government's inflationary spending, how much is each Canadian mortgage going to go up as a result?
Oh, good question.
Minister of Finance.
Catch this. Watch this answer.
Speaker, I like this question period this Friday because we have so many good news for Canadians. It is interesting.
Did you catch what Champagne said right there? He took our slogan. Freaking guy. It's a Feel Good Friday.
news for Canadians. It is interesting, the question, but the real question is that we have a plan and our plan is working. 2.2%, Mister, in terms of growth in the last quarter. This is what Canada is about. It's about investing in our people. It's about investing in our industry. It's about investing in Canada. Mr. Speaker, not only we have growth, but we always have a triple rating, a AAA credit rating, Mr. Speaker. One of the two countries in the G7. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, that's a confident Canada. That's an ambitious Canada. That's the Canada we'll build together.
Oh, man. Buckle in, folks. Gonna be a long time in question period for the next couple weeks. Oh, gosh. Canada's doing great things. Our plan, we have a plan. Our plan is working. That's his answer. Yeah, okay. Oh, my gosh. We still have our AAA credit rating, which Liberals have loved because they have very few numbers they can actually trot out there that sound remotely good. So that's one of the few figures they love trotting out. AAA credit rating. Look at us. Canada's still in good hands. We won't look at all the other numbers that look terrible. They're just tanking. But we'll AAA credit rating. That's what we like to see. AAA credit rating. Well, let's not forget, folks. Let's not forget what Desjardins published last week. Just a reminder of how terrible things are. If they produce the deficits they claim to be doing, which we already realizing, they're going to be increasing those deficits. These are the deficits, the dark green here on the right, bar on the right for those who are colorblind. I'm not being a jerk about that. I'm just being honest. Dark green, bar on the right, is the projected amount of deficit spending that they're going to produce. Left-hand side was what they produced in last year's economic false statement. Okay? Look how it dwarfs it across the board. I'm telling you right now, from what we're seeing from this spending bill, of the little we know, that green block is going to expand even further. And even based on these figures, Desjardins said down here, says the delay in publishing a comprehensive fiscal plan introduces a degree of opacity at a time when global markets are likely to scrutinize sovereign balance sheets. The government of Canada risks having its credit rating downgraded as a result. Fitch, a rating agency, raised the concern even before it was announced that there would be no budget this spring. And this comes on the heels of the U.S. government debt downgrade by Moody's late last week. So that AAA credit rating is going to be disappearing fairly shortly if this keeps up. And they won't be able to trot that out in the House of Commons. They'll have to find something else. But it is frustrating when the obfuscation takes place, the redirection, the "you can't see me" happens a lot in the House of Commons. The questions are being asked directly, especially when you're tabling a $486 billion spending bill. And you're saying, well, look, we have a plan and our plan is working. Where's the plan? You have to put an APB out for that plan. Don't know where it went. And when the questions are asked plain and simple, what's being done? Where's the money going? Why is there an increase of $6 billion to consultants? Please inform the Canadian public what you're planning to do when there's no budget in place with this money. We'd like to know. And the response is, that's a great question, but the real question, redirect. Head fake. That's what you're going to be getting a lot of, so buckle up. And it's going to be on us, going to be on the people, be on me as a show, me and Reg, other shows like ours, to continue calling it out, putting pressure on in a thoughtful manner that isn't yelling at the top of your lungs, crying about it, but being thoughtful in criticizing this issue. Champagne went on David Cochran's show last night to talk about the fact they have no budget. And even David Cochran tried-ish to push on Champagne on this. And Champagne did, again, the head fake again on Power and Politics. But the difference is we're lacking a journalist who's actually going to hold his feet to the fire. Watch this. You ever read a headline and think, is that true? Or worse, why is every outlet telling me a different story? Yes, it's no secret that news today is broken. Outrage gets clicks and the algorithms feed you what you already believe. It's easy to end up in an echo chamber without even realizing it. That's why I've grown to bring in Ground News as a part of our show prep. It's not just another news app. It actually shows you how different media outlets are covering the same story across the political spectrum. You can literally see the bias of your sources, track how stories are covered in left, center, and right outlets, and get the full picture without the noise. Here you can see that over 14 sources reported on the story, and you can see all the headlines of the reporting sources so you can easily compare them. While the headlines are very similar for the story, this is where the summary section is helpful to understand the primary points that are happening within the story. If we look at the bias distribution, 13 of the 14 sources are from the left, which creates a huge blind spot if you're only getting your news from right-leaning sources, which brings me to another great feature, is their blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum, so you never miss out on important stories that aren't reported by your usual news source. I partnered with Ground News because of their mission. Their mission to bring clarity to the news. We've learned that everyone has their bias, including myself, and Ground News allows you to understand the bias and read those stories through that specific lens, giving you a fuller picture and fuller understanding of what is happening in the news. If you want to stop being manipulated by headlines and start seeing the full picture of this news stories that come across your feed, use my link ground.news/elevate or scan the QR code to get 40% off and unlimited access to their Vantage plan. Remember to use my link in the description or the QR code on screen to get the discount for a limited time. Again, that's ground.news/elevate. Now let's get into the story.
But there was still $20 billion booked as revenue from that. I mean, is that just not operational
Well, I would say
anymore?
this is a projection at the moment in time, and it just tell people, when people say you're going to present a budget in early fall, it's going to be an ambitious budget, we're going to be rigorous and prudent. But at the same time, it just showed to people how things are changing. Like I said at the time, we have a NATO summit that is coming, so we'll have more clarity around defense investments that we need to do. At the same time, we have an efficiency review in terms of the federal government. How can we be more efficient to deliver service to Canadian? And you're talking about this trade war that's going on. And to your point, things are changing almost by the day. So you want to be in a position when you're presenting fiscal projection to have a level of certainty when you come to Canadian. Where I'm a serious person, we're going to present serious analysis with respect to the forecast. And that's why I think people have understood that the fall is the right time in order to come to Canadian with forecasts.
But help me understand that, because the last time you were on the show, you were telling us there wasn't going to be a budget in the fall. It was going to be a fall economic statement,
Yes.
which is,
then some people took it further, but I said there'll be.
You catch that though? David Cochrane seems to at least try to show that he's being a journalist here and says, you said there's going to be no budget. You said there's going to be a fall economic statement. But then Carney came around and said, no, there will be a budget. So what's going on? And then you can tell Champagne was going to retort back with, a fall economic statement is kind of like a budget. That's kind of what he's going to say. And you can tell Cochrane answered it for himself, saying, well, and it gets a little weird. It's like, no, answer the question, stand on your 2 feet, put your chest out, man, and earn that money that you've been getting from the government. Please, we'd love to see it, folks, from the public coffers. We'd love to see it. But no.
Be a fall economic statement.
Right, but
And he
how
said
do
it's
we
gonna
go
be
from a fall
substantial.
economic statement only to the Prime Minister saying there's going to be a
Well,
budget?
I mean, at the end of the day, what we discussed and we said we would be in a better position by then to have a number of uncertainties. I don't want to say resolved, but at least we'll have greater clarity.
Sure.
And we're serious. And when you're serious, you say, okay, if we have that level of clarity with respect to some of the forecasts, we'll be in a position to present a full budget, which is, we want to be transparent with Canadians, but part of being transparent is providing numbers that people will say, okay, these people have done their homework, the level of uncertainty by fall in certain respect, will probably be lesser than what we are now. So therefore, we'll be in a great position to present a full budget to Canadians. And,
Right.
And that's the right thing.
But this was right after Cabinet was sworn in, and not that much time passed from you saying there wouldn't be a budget, it would be a fall economic statement, and then the Prime Minister saying a full budget. And, maybe the distinction doesn't matter to Canadians, but there is a difference in the order of magnitude and what they try to
even
accomplish.
the clerk said, depends. You had fall economic statement, which had a lot more pages than budgets. And listen.
So it's just a naming change? It's not a substantive change?
You're going
or?
about semantic. What I'm saying is that at the end of the day, what we want is to provide clarity to Canadian, have a level of confidence with respect to the forecast, and people who are watching us understand that once you will have had the NATO summit, hopefully by then we'll have a bit more clarity about this trade war, and we will have a chance to do more of our efficiency of.
And then word salad, word salad, word salad. He really tries to essentially conflate budget and economic statement. He does. He tries. He tries. He tries, and it's disgusting. It's frustrating. And it's annoying the way they try to mislead Canadians. But David Cochrane can try to be a journalist there, and was just like, meh. But that's what you're getting right now. Is they're getting a lot of heat put on them, which rightfully so. But where's the budget? Where is that? We want to know. Well, we had a fall economic statement. That's what we planned. No, but no. You said no budget. You said maybe there'd be a fall economic statement. And then your boss came over top. You realized you got too much far for saying there's no budget coming. Said, no, there will be a budget. And now you look like a fool trying to explain why you weren't going to be promising a budget as the Minister of Finance. Where's the budget? We want to know. This is the question many people are having. And people look to Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservatives. And he made a statement today that was pretty clear on how the Conservatives are going to approach this. And he says, all right, enough of the foolishness. enough with the shenanigans. Let's get down to business. This is how we view it, and this is what we're going to be doing about it.
This week, Mark Carney introduced $500 billion of spending with no budget. The first time that has happened in decades. Not only that, but he's increasing government spending by 8%, with the lion's share of that spending going to bloated bureaucracy, consultants, and contractors. Bureaucracy will go up by 6%. That's more than double the combined rate of inflation and population growth. Consultants are going to go up by 37% to $26 billion a year. The average Canadian family will now spend $1,400 on federal government consultants alone. Contractors get more money. And let's be clear, the extra spending Mr. Carney has asked Parliament's approval on is not for investments. It's for money that's out the door and gone forever, almost all of it on bureaucratic administration and other high-priced consultants. That is totally irresponsible. It's clear that Mark Carney is even more expensive than Justin Trudeau. This $500 billion spending bill will drive up inflation, interest rates, above and beyond what they would otherwise be, at a time when we've got a record increase in people who are unable to pay their bills. According to Equifax, delinquencies are up. The number of people missing mortgage payments is up. 2 million people are lined up at food banks. And we have desperation in the streets. People cannot afford an even more expensive Liberal government. And that is why I'm announcing today that Conservatives will vote against this $500 billion of inflationary, irresponsible, out of control Liberal spending.
Conservatives have made it clear that when this comes down to a vote, they will be voting against it, and rightfully so. When I see a price tag of $486 billion of spending and we see no transparency on it, and you get Champagne hopping on CBC saying, well, we want to take our time with the budget. We want to make sure it's right. We want to make sure it's flushed and thought out. Boom. But we're going to waste no time asking for $500 billion of spending. Yeah, we're over that. And I hope other people are open to, I hope the NDP are interested in rebuilding their party. I'll say this much. This would be monumental. Don't see it happening. However, it would be very interesting. This goes to a vote and the Liberals lose. Yikes. Looks like those Liberals hoping to get a summer vacation will be campaigning yet again. We'll see how this goes. But what Poilievre said here about what all the spending leads to, delinquencies are up, people are defaulting on their mortgages, people aren't behind on payments of their mortgages, boom, boom, boom. Lots of questions about what's going on financially in our country at the moment. And even so that a small town in BC, well, is officially declaring a state of emergency because of how much crime is up. Because people can't afford their homes, can't afford their food, can't afford the power, can't afford to feed their kids, which leads to more crime in the streets. And then we also bring in a swath of people to a country where they're not very much interested in integrating to our culture, you're going to see an increase in crime. And when you have Williams Lake in BC voting to declare a state of emergency for their downtown core, that tells you everything you need to know. BC City considers state of emergency to deal with rising crime, but not nightly curfew. A city in BC's central interior is taking the unprecedented step of considering a local state of emergency due to public safety and crime concerns. Williams Lake, which has a population of just over 11,000 people, has been struggling to deal with rising crime and helping those in the community with robust support and treatment services. At a meeting on May 27th, Council voted to direct staff to investigate what the city can do in a state of emergency, including putting people into involuntary care if needed. While law enforcement plays a vital role in public safety, lasting community wellness depends on collaboration from social services, healthcare, educators, and community organizations, Council heard in a report from staff. The 6 most common risk factors in the community are suspected unmanaged mental health concerns, lack of appropriate housing, the inability of residents to have their basic needs met, drug abuse or misuse, financial hardship, and residents associating with negative peers, the report found. Councillor Scott Nelson, who proposed the motion for the local state of emergency, said change has to happen now. There's a theme that is out there, and that theme is obviously one that there's lots of thefts, there's assaults in the public, there's open drug use, There's fires in the downtown core regularly. He said there's public indecency, there's intoxication, there's crapping all over the sidewalks, there's wiping all over the businesses in the downtown core. We've had a break-in at the shelter, I think 3 times now, in the back at the existing Hamilton Inn. They're throwing needles in people's yards where children live by Hamilton Inn. We opened up the Watanio Park washrooms approximately 18 days ago, and it's been burnt 3 times. It's been smashed and vandalized on the outside. It's just simply not normal, he says. Nelson said the homeless camps in the city have become more dangerous. It's just simply bizarre what's happening out there, and I say this sincerely, I believe in my heart that these people need a helping hand, he said. When these types of activities are occurring and they're starting to endanger the lives of other people and they're starting to harm the environment that we live in, that puts fear into a community. We can list off all the rights and all the freedoms, but those rights, those freedoms come with duties. Nelson said other people need to enjoy those rights and freedoms as well, and the city is facing record numbers of overdoses and criminal incidents. And so that's a council member going off about this. Very passionate plea, and use some quote-unquote unparliamentary language to get the point across. How many communities is this happening across the country? It's happening everywhere. And the frustrating part is the response that he got when he posted it, or when he said this on council. He says, again, he went the extreme. He says he advocated for a curfew to be put in place from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. However, that was voted down by council. The vote for possibly declaring a state of emergency was not unanimous, with some councillors saying it is too extreme and damaging to Williams Lake's image. That is the priority. Our image is going to take a hit. We can't declare a state of emergency. Everything he said was true and everything he said is right, but we can't declare a state of emergency. It would be too bad for tourism. Sorry, no one's coming here anyways. However, it still got voted through 4-3. And they're going to have an increased police presence in the downtown core of this town/city, whatever you want to call it. But that's the liberal mentality. Act like the problem isn't there, even when it's staring you right in the face. People are suffering, but we can't do everything in our power because it would be bad for our image. I feel for the people who live in this community. I feel for the people who live in BC and the surrounding areas, or in the areas of their BC. So we see it here in Halifax as well, in various parts. People are suffering. People are having a hard time. But it's time for some courage to take place. And I'm happy to see a council member is standing against the noise, taking a stand for his community, and saying, screw you, this needs to happen, and we need to start taking care of our people. Screw what the government's doing. Screw what the province is doing. We need to be the ones who take care of our town. And I think of mayors like Adam West of Port Coquitlam, very similar mentality. Time to take care of our people. Screw what's happening on the outside. We need to take responsibility. And that, my friends, is an inspiring message. But anyways, enjoy your Friday. Hope you have a good one. I'm out.